at those two chapters, and that will get us close also to Deuteronomy 5. We won't have to go far. And if you'd like to put a bookmark or a finger or a prayer card in Jonah, that'll get us close to a cluster of passages in the prophets. So over the last 3 weeks or so, I think it's been, we've looked at covenant. And last week, we began to look at love. And I wanted to look at love because it's a covenant word in the Old Testament. It's a relational word. And the two go together. And then that will let me get into New Testament love. And then that will let me take 2 weeks and go to Argentina, and Rodney will be back next week and the week after, Lord willing, to do more word studies. And I'm not sure exactly what he'll do. I think I had them written down, some of the ideas that he tossed out, and I do not have that sheet of paper with me, which means I could probably find it, but I can't find it now. So we'll all be surprised. Rodney will be here for 2 weeks, and then we'll come back, Lord willing, in 3, and we'll do some more words. I hope this has been helpful. If you're interested and you want to dig, I showed this to you last time, or the week before, and I'll show it again. 70 Hebrew words every Christian should know. I learned about this book from Rodney, who did a couple of these words in a Wednesday night conversations class some months ago. Schlimm is the author's last name, S-C-H-L-I-M-M. It's very accessible. Ooh, wow. It's very accessible. He'll give you Hebrew, obviously, because that's kind of the point, but it will not be oppressive, and it will not stand in the way of understanding. He tries to open things up for the interested, motivated English reader who knows not a thing about Hebrew, and tries to let you see some of the beauty of the language and the vocabulary. Now, I wish there were such a thing as easy, and there may be. I haven't looked terribly hard. I've looked a little bit hard, for the New Testament. Someone needs to write 70 Greek words every Christian should know. However, an older book, William Barclay, who had a series of commentaries on the New Testament about this size, Daily Study Bible, back in the 70s. So I don't know if this is still in print or not. It may well be in print. New Testament Words, William Barclay, B-A-R-C-L-A-Y. His volumes of New Testament commentaries may also be available, also accessible. This is for the motivated English reader. He'll give you Greek, but it will be in italics in English. He'll transliterate it for you, which is helpful. If you really want to see what the Greek letters look like, we could always find that out, but it'd be a curiosity for all of us because we don't read it. Well, same approach, or very similar approach. This is just older. That may be useful. Both of these are available over at the ACU library, so if you want to check them out, I'm sorry, I haven't got them checked out. So I'm already ahead of you. But you can check them out as soon as I return them, okay? So they're the only copies that they've got at the library, but you can get them at the library and you need not buy them. And I'm not going to have them very much longer. And so if you're interested, you can at least maybe look at them at the library before you decide you really want to buy them. So, covenant. We're in Deuteronomy 6 and 7. What sets Yahweh, Jehovah, remember Rodney even talked a bit about that a couple weeks ago. What sets his covenant apart from nearly every other covenant ever there was? One is that the covenant that God has with Israel, the fact that it exists, sets it apart. Here's what I mean. If Brother Roberts can be believed, remember I talked about J.J.M. Roberts, born I think in Winters, little tiny Winters, he becomes a world-renowned Old Testament scholar. ACC, I think in the mid-50s. I don't know exactly when he graduated, but that's about where he is chronologically in our world. So we wouldn't have to go far to find folks that may know him. J.J.M. Roberts. Not J.W. Roberts, that's a different Roberts, and I don't think they're kin. They may be kin. J.J.M. Roberts. He says there's just no parallel of the kind of covenant that we see with Israel in Deuteronomy and Exodus. There's just no parallel in the ancient world. There's nothing else quite like it. What sets it apart, one, the fact that it exists, that it's a deity who enacts covenant with his people directly, sets our covenant apart. The idea of covenant was around. Covenants were around. Parity covenants between peers or equals, suzerainty vassal covenants between a suzerain or a sovereign and a vassal dependent king or a vassal state, those were around. The covenant in Deuteronomy bears some similarities with those covenants where you have one party who is vastly more powerful than the other. In those arrangements, the one party gives the stipulations one way. In a parity covenant, where the parties are on par, you'd have negotiations back and forth more or less among equals. There's no negotiating with Yahweh. Israel does not say, we appreciate these stipulations, but we'd like to insert these on our behalf. So you don't see that. You see a suzerain vassal covenant between a deity and his people. You don't find that. You find kings overpowering neighboring countries and enacting covenants. You see parity agreements where everyone is kind of in the back of their mind looking out for number one, even though they'll make concessions with a more or less equal peer. Not what you find in Deuteronomy. The fact that it is monotheistic from start to finish, front to back, top to bottom, root, branch, and fruit is unique. The other covenants will invoke the gods, sometimes as witnesses or sometimes in the kind of, almost as a formality. Yahweh's identity and character pervades this covenant. It really gives the stipulations some integrity of what it means to be the people of God is to be like Him. So if you've read Leviticus and you see this refrain over and over, you are to wear this kind of clothing, or you're to treat your animals in this way, or you're to treat the stranger that way, you're to do this or to do that, because I am the Lord your God, I am holy, and therefore you are to be holy. And you could find a very weighty statement like that next to what we would consider one of the most mundane kind of instructions about the kinds of clothes you wear. Do not do this or that because of who I am. So it's the nature of God, the character of God that infuses the stipulations. That sets it apart. It's not by force, it's not by coercion, it's not by dominance. It is rather by love. And that brings us to Deuteronomy 6. So you know Deuteronomy 6:1, and Rodney talked about this a couple weeks ago. Okay? This is the command, the statutes, the ordinances. In covenant language, these are the stipulations of this agreement. This is what it means to be in covenant with me. The Lord your God has commanded me to teach you, so you may follow them in the land you are about to enter and possess, Do this so you may fear the Lord your God all the days of your life by keeping all his statutes and commands I am giving you, your son, your grandson, so that you may have a long life. Listen, Israel, and be careful to follow them, so that you may prosper and multiply greatly, because the Lord God of your fathers has promised you a land flowing with milk and honey. Listen, Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. That's the essence of this relationship. On your part is to love God. The words I am giving you should be in your heart. Repeat them, talk about them. Okay, on we go. So the notion that keeping the law was kind of mechanical, never was the intent. It's always a matter of your heart. The will of your deepest being to respond to what God has done with your love. And that encompasses your whole person, heart, soul, strength. Okay? Skip ahead, cross the column in our Pew Bible to verse 20, still Deuteronomy 6. When your son asks you in the future, what is the meaning of the decrees, statutes, and ordinances that the Lord our God has commanded you? Why do we, Mom, Dad, why do we do that? As if a child would ever ask why, right? You tell them. Now this is, there are several options. Why do we do this? Because I said so. Right? We've all said that. Because it's a good thing. Because that's just what we do. I'm not going to explain why you have to sit down and eat and you can't get up and run around. Because when we eat, we sit down at the table. That's just what we do. Okay? Why do we do this? Why do we do that? Okay? When he asks why, you tell the story. So the covenant is embedded, it has integrity and meaning because of things that happened. What is it that happened? You tell him, we were slaves of Pharaoh in Egypt, and the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a strong hand. Before our eyes, the Lord inflicted great and devastating signs and wonders on Egypt, on Pharaoh, and all his household. He brought us out from there in order to lead us in and give us the land he swore to our fathers. The Lord commanded us to follow these statutes and fear the Lord our God for our prosperity always and our preservation as it is today. Righteousness will be ours if we are careful to follow every one of these commands before the Lord our God as he has commanded us. That's what you tell them. Why do we do this? Because at one point we were hopeless, and God has kept his promise, and he delivered us. That's why we keep the commands. We keep the commands because God has acted for us. So the character of this covenant depends upon the character of God, which is what? He honors his promise. He is faithful to his promise. He is reliable and trustworthy. That is why we keep the commands. Okay, turn over the page to Deuteronomy 7. There's a paragraph at 7, 1 through 6. Okay, when you come into the land, I want you to make no treaty, verse 2. Make no covenant, make no berit with the nations around you. You are in covenant with me. Okay? I realize there's a theological thing to deal with there about the ban or the command to drive the people out. Okay? that I can't get into now. So we'll have to acknowledge that it's there and move and stay with covenant. Verse 7. Ask Rodney that. There we go. He'll appreciate that. Just ask him. He'll be able to tell you all about it. That was mean, wasn't it? But he will. He'll have a good answer. The Lord had his heart set on you and chose you. Not because, talk about that narrative of his deliverance when we were hopeless. Okay? There is grace upon grace that appears in Jesus Christ in a way that was totally new. But the idea that there was no grace or there was no love in the Old Testament just is not accurate if we were to read the Old Testament. So, yes, grace and truth have appeared in Jesus Christ in a brand new way. Absolutely. But look at Deuteronomy 7:7. When you were in Egypt, and I brought you out, it was not because you were more numerous. In fact, you were the fewest. It was not your great power, but because the Lord loved you. I think our English Bibles will all have love. That's the English word that we're probably going to have there, I suspect. Okay? Because the Lord loved you and kept the oath he swore to your fathers. He brought you out with a strong hand and redeemed you from the place of slavery, from the power of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. He did this for you because he loved you. You did not earn it. You did not deserve it. You didn't merit it. You weren't strong. There wasn't a benefit that he gained because of what you had. There wasn't a strategic advantage you offered that he wanted. There wasn't an angle that he was working. There wasn't anything in it for him. There was no ulterior motives. There was no subtext. It was his own love for you. Know that the Lord your God is God, the faithful God who keeps his gracious covenant loyalty. There it is. I don't know what your version may have. Covenant loyalty. For 1,000 generations with those who love him and keep his commands. But he directly pays back and destroys those who hate him. That could raise another issue. One parallel or one backdrop to that is the kings who would enact covenant with you will repay generosity many times over, and they will repay disloyalty many, 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 many times over. Yahweh repays covenant faithfulness over and over, and he repays loyalty justly, but not vengefully. We could kind of go down a side trail on that. Okay? Do you see our English word, because he loved you, in verse 8, and that covenant loyalty in verse 9? Our term is chesed, H-E-S-E-D, with a hard kind of sound on the H. Sometimes in English spelled C-H-E-S-E-D. Hesed, love, covenant loyalty, covenant faithfulness. It can be translated in several different ways. There's our word for love, because he was loyal to his covenant. We have benefits because he has made an obligation and he is faithful to keep it. He loves us, his steadfast love for us. Okay, now let's go to Jonah. Jonah, I want you to go preach. I don't want to go preach. I want you to go preach. I don't want to go preach. Okay? Get up and go to the great city of Nineveh and preach, because their evil has come up before me. And so Jonah got up, just like their evil. Boy, Jonah is full of wordplay and imagery. It's just beautiful. This is August, July, right? I think it. Oh wow, this would have been the summer of 1997. I think it was. I read Hebrew with Rodney Cloud in a summer class. I think it was the Hebrew readings in summer of 97, and we read Jonah in Hebrew. It was chock full of word plays and imagery. It's just gorgeous. Okay? Jonah, get up. Get up and go. And Jonah got up and went the other way. He got up and went. Why would he go up and leave? Okay, look at Jonah 4:2. Isn't this what I thought while I was in? So he goes and he preaches, and there's a tremendous response. And it's just what Jonah feared. Yes.
One time they said he was one of the most successful preachers that ever lived.
He preaches what? 2 sentences? Repent. And half the town, repents.
But he certainly had a response.
And that's what I'm afraid of. Isn't this why I fled toward Tarshish? I knew that you are a gracious and compassionate God, slow to anger, and there's our term, abounding in chesed. Faithful love is what our Pew Bible says. Steadfast love. And one who relents from sending disaster. I knew this is who you were. In your very character, that is who you are. And that is why I wanted to leave. Okay? The very character of Yahweh is chesed. Okay? Go over to Micah, since we're right here. Look at this term that shows up in Micah 6:8. Micah 6:8. Why does that reference ring a bell? Micah 6:8. That's the famous passage you know from Micah. Mankind, he has told each of you what is good and what the Lord requires: to act justly, to love faithfulness, there's our term, to walk humbly with your God. What about Micah 7:18? Who is a God like you, forgiving iniquity and passing over rebellion for the remnant of his inheritance? He does not hold his anger forever, because he delights in faithful love. Here's our term. He will again have compassion on us. There's our term. Look at verse 20. You will show loyalty to Jacob. There it is. And faithful love to Abraham, as you swore to our fathers from the days long ago. So the closing hope of Micah, the hope that Micah gives you at the end. Remember an oracle of hope. Remember we talked about oracles of doom and oracles of hope? Seems so long ago, doesn't it? We were in Micah. The great news of the hope that we have is because God is so covenantly loyal. He loves us. Okay. How about Joel? We're going to have to go back to Joel. Is that right? Yes. Go back to Joel. You don't have to go far. Page 808. Joel 2. Okay, without jumping into the story of Joel, to just notice the passage, 2 verse 12. Ooh, bless you. Even now, this is the Lord's declaration. Turn to me with all your heart. That reminds us of Deuteronomy 6, right there, doesn't it? Turn to me with all your heart, with fasting, weeping, and mourning. Tear your hearts, not just your clothes. Boy, that's a vivid line. Return to the Lord your God, for he is, there it is, gracious and compassionate, slow to anger, abounding in steadfast love, and he relents from sending disaster. Who knows? He may relent. So the prophet Joel, to those who think it is too far gone, there's no point, you're never too far gone when you're looking at Yahweh's steadfast love. Because his steadfast love is not rooted in your viability within yourself. His steadfast love is in spite of your inviability. That's a word. That's not a word. Your lack of viability. You would look at yourself and say, this is over. I'm too far gone. Yahweh says, you're not too far gone because I refuse to give up. That's remarkable. That's love. That's love. Not rooted in your lovability, your lovableness, but rooted in his decision to love you and his obligation that he obligates himself for you. Back to Genesis 15 and the covenant ceremony where we cut the animals, we cut a covenant, we cut a berit, and Yahweh passes between the parts of the animals and says, I cannot swear by anything greater than me, so I myself pass through that I will honor this covenant. How about Hosea 4? So go back a little bit. This is page 799 in our Pew Bible. Lots to say about Hosea, but the term covenant shows up and the term love shows up in a big way in Hosea. What's the problem? Well, the short version is in Hosea 4, 1 through 6. What's the problem? The problem with Israel in Hosea is, here's the word, hear the word of the Lord, people of Israel. The Lord has a case against the inhabitants of the land. It's a legal term. It's the kind of legal term you would invoke, I guess, if we were to go in before the judge and say, my neighbor and I had an agreement about this strip of grass between our driveways. You remember that? That's been our illustration now for 3 weeks. So you have an agreement with your neighbor about who's going to cut the grass in the driveway between your two houses, right? And my neighbor has violated our agreement. So I'd like to plead my case. There's been a violation of agreement, breach of contract, we'd say, and I have an issue. I plead my case. So in the courtroom setting, Yahweh has a case against Israel. There is no truth, no faithful love, and no knowledge of God in the land. Cursing, lying, murder, stealing, adultery are rampant. 10 Commandments. Okay? The core stipulations of the covenant are rampant. One act of bloodshed follows another. For this reason the land mourns, and everyone who lives in it languishes, along with the animals and the birds, the fish. Let no one dispute, let no one argue, for my case is against you priests. You will stumble by day. The prophet will stumble with you by night. I will destroy your mother. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. You may have heard that verse. This is that verse. For lack of, we could talk about knowledge, wisdom, factors into this kind of cluster of concepts. Okay, that's the issue in Hosea is there is no covenant love. They've broken covenant. Okay. Well, let's go to Psalms before time runs out. I don't want time to run out because we haven't talked about New Testament love yet, but we'll see what we can do. How are we doing on time, by the way? Oh, running out. Psalm 106. Chesed shows up a lot in the Psalms. We've seen a few occurrences in the prophets. The prophets will give you Chesed, like in Hosea, in an oracle of doom to explain why the doom is coming. Israel has failed to keep covenant. And they will give you hesed when they show you the hope that is still out there for you. You have hope because God is faithful. It will show up in the Psalms. Just about every time our English Bibles are going to do what they do here, it's going to be this word hesed underneath, covenant loyalty. Okay? Psalm 106:1. Hallelujah, give thanks to the Lord, for He is good, for His faithful love endures forever. You may have steadfast love. You know, in Lamentations, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. We saw that song, Hesed. Look at Psalm 107. Turn the page. Give thanks to the Lord, for He is good. His faithful love endures forever. Psalm 107:1. How about Psalm 136? This is striking. You definitely want to see this. A call and response type of psalm. Looks like a call and response. We do the same thing every week. We'll do it. We're going to do it in about 10 minutes, right? I have to stop talking, right? We call to worship. The leader will say something and the people respond. That looks like Psalm 136. Look at every other line in Psalm 136. Hesed. There's our term. Give thanks to the Lord, for He is good. His faithful love endures forever. His hesed endures forever. Your version may have steadfast love. Our Pew Bible has faithful love. Over and over, give thanks to the Lord. He's done this, He's done this, He's done this. And the echo that comes every other line, His faithful love endures forever. His faithful love endures forever. That's hesed. It has to do with a mode of behavior that arises from a relationship. It's essentially a relational word. The very essence of covenant is relationship, and the very essence of hesed is relationship. It arises from relationship. It requires community, and it forms community. It's interpersonal, it's relational, it's communal. You don't just have hesed kind of in the cockles of your heart in your private space alone. I guess you could, okay? But that's not all that hesed is. Not just a warm feeling you have privately. You extend hesed in relationship with people. Yes. Yes. Oh. This is a covenant term. It's relational. It's communal.
What's involved in the word relationship? I mean, everybody says, I have a relationship with the Lord. I have a relationship with God. What does that mean in terms of action or thought?
If we were to stay with our Hebrew term covenant, back to Deuteronomy 6, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. I often hear the word spirituality tossed around, and I don't know that I have a perfect definition of spirituality, but my working definition is that it's totally off the top of my head, is what does that mean? Here's how I think of it. Living consistently with what you say you believe. Spirituality. The definition of that would be defined by, if we're going to stay with the Old Testament covenant, what does it mean to be in covenant? You would look at the law. You would look at Torah, the instruction, to follow that. In other words, it's not just an undefined feeling of the heart at the moment. It's defined by the stipulations in the covenant. In other words, if you were to say, what does it mean to be in covenant with Yahweh or to be in relationship with Yahweh? If you know, average Hebrew walking down the street in, 1000 BC, you were to pick them up. What does it mean to be in covenant with Yahweh? They would say you would love the Lord your God with all your heart and you would follow the law. Why? Because he has redeemed us from Israel or from Egypt, and he has constituted us as a people. And that is what it means to be in relationship with him. That's my short answer. Yes? Yes. Yes. Well, before time runs out, time has run out. Talking about the English term love in the New Testament, just an observation. In English, we have one word that we have to understand the context and the usage of it to understand what we really mean when we say love. In Greek, they have different words that take the place of the contextual clues that we've got to do in English. Now, they still have nuance and they still have context, they still have usage, and all of that still matters when you're 6 years old speaking Greek. Little Greek kids, don't have a problem with it. I mean, it's just second nature for them. That's how my Hebrew professor would say, you can learn Hebrew because every kindergartner in Israel does. Okay, well, thank you. Do they struggle as much as I am? Like, he goes, yeah, of course they do, but they just learn. Okay, so in English, the word love gets used a lot. You love chocolate chip cookies. I know I do. You love your spouse. You love your children. You love the Lord. You love all kinds of things. Okay? You love your church. You love your friends. You love your family. There are a range of terms in Greek that get translated in English as love. One of them has to do with romantic love, eros. It's a word we get in English, erotic. That's a certain kind of love. When you say that, just the use of that term conjures up a certain kind of love, or a certain kind of feeling, a certain kind of desire, we would say.
We hear about all the time is agape.
Agape. Another term has to do with family love. Oh, by the way, that eros, that term does not appear in the Greek New Testament. Not that the Greeks weren't saying it, it's the people who are writing the New Testament didn't use it. That's all that means, okay? Another term has to do, we would call it family affection. It's a different kind of love, it's a different term. A form of that appears in Romans 12 when Paul's talking about brotherly love, family love. Okay? Another term that, and that's about the only time that one shows up in the Greek New Testament. A third one is philia, the word behind part of Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. Philia for your adelphos, for your brothers, love for your brothers. Okay? That shows up a lot. That's your friendship. That's your affectionate, kindly feelings towards your friends, your family, your parents, your children, your best friend. You remember you're a kid, you had your friends, and then you had your best friend. You're my best friend. It's not that I don't dislike my other friends, but you're my best friend. That's philia. Filial love. Sometimes in English we just create a new English term, F-I-L-I-A-L, filial. And then there's agape. Agape shows up all over the New Testament.
Do you have storge?
Storge is that second one, that family love that doesn't occur really in the New Testament apart from being embedded in a phrase. Agape. Agape is a love that is rooted in your choice, not just your emotions or your feelings. it's similar to Hesed in the fact that it is not rooted in the other person's lovability. The context of agape is really quite distinct when we see, and we don't have time, that its usage is rooted in what God has done for us. And that does not depend upon our lovability. That depends upon His choice. That kind of love can be commanded. Love one another, agape one another, because it's not rooted in your emotions. Well, they're going to come in whether we stop or not, so I may as well stop, okay? I hope everything goes well for you next 2 weeks. Ask Rodney the hard questions. He studied to learn the answers to those hard questions. So you just ask him, and we'll see what happens. I hope to see you in 3 weeks.